All right, y'all, but we're here for a reason, which is primarily, we're here for many reasons, but the number one reason why we're here, of course, is to learn. And today our teacher, our educator, and our expert from whom we are learning is Maria Jensen, who started her career in environmental health and safety in the e-waste recycling industry after graduating with a master's in global health with research related to mercury contamination from electronic waste. How interesting, we actually just learned about mercury bioaccumulation and fish in our watershed from Randy Kolka just a couple weeks ago. I swear, I mean, I don't believe that people need accreditation or degrees in order to prove that they've gained knowledge, but I also believe that if you came to every single Tuesday group, you'd have a bachelor's degree by now. All right, so now Maria does education and advocacy work around e-waste management in Minnesota through RECA, the Recycling Electronics for Climate Action. So let's give Maria a warm round of applause as a welcome.
I will walk around a little bit, so I just have to carry both of these. Is that what I do?
Yeah, please grab the amplified mic.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for having me here. And it's so good to see so many engaged community members in one room. I heard from Hudson that you all started back in 2008. Is that right? Yep. Is there anybody, I'm curious if there's anybody here that was kind of in that OG group back in 2008. Wow. Awesome. That's really cool. I'm curious, is anybody else involved in other community groups? I'm curious what those are. Is there Sierra Club members? I know we have at least one in the room. Yeah, some Sierra Club members. What other groups are people a part of?
Nature Conservancy.
Nature Conservancy?
Ely Field Naturals.
Ely Field Naturalists.
Ely Field Naturalists. Ely Community Resource.
Northern Lights Clubhouse.
Northern Lights Clubhouse.
Northern Lights Park.
Northern Lights Arts.
Empower. Empower.
Empower.
Ely Folk School.
Ely Folk School. Awesome.
I will say that as a city council member, I'm on 8 commissions and committees. So one of them being the cemetery.
Okay.
I say that because I thought it would be a sleeper for me. It's always very, very, very busy and can be volatile. Wow.
Interesting. Yeah, city council member. Great. So I'm curious, who knows what e-waste is? Got some hands? Can I have a volunteer back there to tell me what is e-waste? Do your best at giving a definition.
Computer junk.
Computer junk, okay. Old stuff that you're not using anymore, great. Items containing microchips, yep.
A lot of people wouldn't think that's saying that. It could be as simple as your toaster with like have it.
Exactly. Something as simple as a toaster. What else? What other examples of e-waste?
Electronic toys.
Electronic toys, right? Like those remote control cars, maybe? Phones?
Except downloads that don't need to happen, if you could optimize them, that we would.
Oh, yeah. That's like a very different perspective. Yeah. What else? What are some other, Hudson?
Birthday cards.
Singing birthday cards. That's one of my favorites. Something that people don't think about, right? Has anybody received one of those birthday cards that sings to you? Yeah. Did you know there's a battery and a circuit board in that? And some wires too? Meaning it is definitely e-waste, or will be once you're done with it, right? I'm curious too, is that who keeps their cards for longer than like a day? You do? What's the appropriate amount of time to keep one of those cards? Do you feel like you have to keep it longer because it's e-waste? Yeah, it's kind of pressure, like you better keep this one. It's important.
Become e-waste after you
Right, yep, that's an important part of the definition of e-waste, right? Otherwise, it's just electronics. Right, electronics become e-waste when they're no longer usable and when they're gonna be sent for disposal. Okay. All right, so e-waste is an informal name for an electronic device or a device powered by electricity that has reached the end of its useful life, right? So it's not something that's broken, but is gonna be repaired, right? Because that could be reused, so it's not gonna be e-waste yet. Another way of explaining it, to kind of give an idea of how encompassing the term is anything with a battery, a cord, or a circuit board. Anything with a battery, cord, or circuit board is gonna be an electronic or an e-waste at the end of its life. Some examples, right? We already gave a lot of these: laptop computers, desktops, cell phones, photocopiers, digital cameras, MP3 players, medical devices, survey equipment, kitchen appliances, right? Like your toaster, VCR, DVD players, video game consoles, and on and on and on, right? And they say that in the United States, we produce 46 pounds of e-waste every year per person. I have a lot of people that really hesitate at that, and they're like, wait, I don't produce 46 pounds of e-waste every year. I only have, 10 different devices in my house. But that statistic is coming across the state, right? So they're taking all of Minnesota's e-waste and then they're dividing it per person. They're not necessarily going into your house and counting how many pounds of e-waste you're getting rid of each year. So when you go to the store, right? When you go to school, when you go to any kind of business, offices, your medical facilities, the electronics that you're engaging with, right? The cash register, the MRI machine, anything that a service or a company is using, those pounds of e-waste are also being divided by the population, if that makes sense. So when they say 46 pounds per capita per person, they mean the total of all e-waste, residential waste, and also business waste. So you're kind of, in a way, you're taking some responsibility for the e-waste that is being created on your behalf, and the businesses that you go to, and your schools and community resources. How much e-waste is generated globally? Sorry, this slide is not very easy to read, but the projection, the e-waste stream is growing. In fact, they say it's the largest growing waste stream in the world. The projection for 2030 is that there will be 74.7 million metric tons per year being created by 2030. E-waste is toxic. In fact, it makes up 70% of the toxins and or the heavy metals in our landfills today. Some of the main toxins that we're thinking about in e-waste from an environmental and health perspective are heavy metals. Things like lithium, barium, mercury, lead, and cadmium can cause neurological damage, especially to fetuses and young infants and young children, if they come in contact with the human body. So if e-waste is ending up in our primary waste stream, right? So if it's ending up in our landfills or, for example, our incinerators, that is when those toxic materials can come in contact with our body. So this picture is taken from an incinerator downtown Minneapolis called the HERC, the Hennepin Energy Recovery Center. And just in the bottom right here is a picture of a microwave. I have lots of other pictures of examples of e-waste going into the HERC, things like cathode ray tube TVs, those large tube TVs that we used to use. Some of us still have those, and they contain a lot of lead. We've seen those going into the incinerators as well. So when this stuff is burned, this material is aerated, right? It's put into the air, and we're able to breathe it directly. Right? So I know you all don't live in Minneapolis, most of you. So these are some other incinerators that are across the state. I think we have 8 in the state of Minnesota. And there's varying degrees of sort processes that the material goes through before they incinerate it. But the sad truth is that almost all incinerators are incinerating some percentage of e-waste, because small devices are very hard to sort out of your municipal waste. Right? E-waste in our waste stream is also very problematic, not only for our health and safety, but also for the health and safety of the workers who handle that waste. This slide I got from the president of DemCon companies down in southern Minnesota. They have a landfill and a transfer station. And this data is from a national waste organization called the NWRA, National Waste and Recycling Administration, or Association. Yeah, thank you. And their data nationally is that the waste industry is losing 3% of its recycling infrastructure annually due to lithium-ion battery fires, right? So lithium-ion batteries are growing in popularity, and they're in your items like your laptops and your cell phones especially. They're your rechargeable batteries that are in most electronic devices that you're plugging into the wall. Insurance rates for anybody handling waste are skyrocketing. They're increasing by over 10% every year. And kind of off the record, the president of DemCon companies told me that lithium-ion batteries in municipal solid waste could cripple the solid waste industry. Meaning that we would have a waste crisis on our hands and no one to handle it. This is the loss of a building in 2018 due to a lithium-ion battery fire. And this was in Blaine, Minnesota, one of DemCon's transfer stations. Lithium-ion batteries in our waste also cost us tax dollars, right? On May 22nd of this year, a lithium-ion battery caused a fire to burn in the Rice County landfill that burned the size of a football field and 30 feet deep. And it took over or about a week to put it out. Meanwhile, those toxic materials that I talked about are polluting the air, polluting the crop soil, and the water in the surrounding area for miles. This is a trailer that caught on fire in the St. Louis County. St. Louis County Environmental Services owns this truck, and they bought it a few weeks earlier and lost it due to the fire. And in 2017, the same county had a fire that cost them almost $500,000 at their transfer station. So these are directly affecting local tax dollars in St. Louis County. So we produce in Minnesota about 266 million pounds of e-waste every year. And only about a fourth of that is captured and disposed of properly, leaving the rest to end up in our incinerators and our landfills, which we know, according to the SWA Solid Waste Administrators Association, about 80% of our landfills are leaching, meaning those toxins are ending up again in our crop soil, in our drinking water, etc. The good thing about e-waste is that the metals that it contains are almost infinitely recyclable, and they're very valuable. About a year ago, two folks from Iron Range Partnership for Sustainability, Marlise Riffle and Keith Stiva, joined me to make a study that was basically asking the question, how much are these metals worth, right? How much of each type of metal is in our e-waste stream every year here in Minnesota, and what's the dollar value behind it? And since they're both here today, I'd actually like them to present some of our results of that, because this is just a really promising thing for the economy in Minnesota, and also really promising for the prospect of being able to stop using virgin metals and also foreign metals. Why don't you introduce yourself, Steve?
Thank you, Maria. So about a year and a half ago, I was talking to Marlies, Iron Range Partnership for Sustainability.
You have to be close to this because that's what we.
Technical difficulties. So about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Marlies and I were from the Iron Range Partnership for Sustainability, of which Cass and Heather represented from this area. We're talking about sustainability and waste. The Iron Range Partnership for Sustainability does a festival every year, which we provide a pickup for people to drop off their e-waste. And every year, people bring in hundreds of items to throw away, and we collect them and then take them to the dump. And only 4 specific e-waste items in Minnesota are processable by the landfills. And those 4 items were established in the 2007 as to what those items were. All the rest of the e-waste that we collected, even though we collected it from folks, we took it to the dump, and it just, we don't collect items that we can't take to the dump. So the result of this was, we asked the question, what are the alternatives, Marlies and I, what are the alternatives to the 4 items that can be processed in Minnesota and collected? And what's the value of it? And so that question, there was no answer for at that time. So we decided, well, maybe we can at least get some idea of what was involved. So Marlies went and collected over 130 research reports, which provided us information about what specific elements were in the various types of e-waste. So if you take classes of e-waste, you can find studies that go out and look at what are the elements that are in that e-waste and how much of each element. So what we did was we took that information and combined it with information that you can find online through various market sources and things of that nature to find out what the value of any particular weight of its elements. So for 68 elements, we knew how much was in various waste streams, and we knew how much value each of those elements had per unit of weight. And then what we did was we worked with Maria to collect information from Repowered, which is one of the largest e-waste collection sites in Minnesota. And we used their real world data. So we took a year's worth of data from Repowered to understand how much of each of the e-waste streams in terms of weight and percentage existed in a typical e-waste stream, and then extended that to the state of Minnesota's total numbers. So from that, we were able to determine how much of each element and also how much of weight it was and how valuable it was. And from that, we were able to determine how much a pound of e-waste is worth in Minnesota. And so the number, for those of you who are interested, is it's approximately $12 a pound for e-waste. And so if you pick your 46 pounds and you took it and extracted the 68 elements from it, you could take 46 pounds, like roughly $10. So it's roughly $500 worth of e-waste materials in each person's e-waste.
I'm gonna bring it. I put my clicker somewhere. So we have some of those results in terms of weight for annually for the total waste stream. So the top element that we have coming out of our e-waste, and this is if we were able to capture the entire e-waste stream and recycle 100% of the metals that are contained in that e-waste, right? So we have iron is our most common element, copper, tin, aluminum, lead, zinc, barium, kind of down the line to give an idea of what the biggest elements are weight-wise. And then value-wise, we have some of our precious metals that we're really interested in, right? Palladium, platinum, gold, copper, tin, lithium, iron, aluminum, copper, aluminum, silver, etc. And total, this is representing $3.1 billion every year just for the state of Minnesota. So I'd like to take a moment because we're talking about, right, we're saying if this material can be collected and if it can be recycled. I think a lot of people don't have a great picture of what recycling e-waste looks like. So I'd like to take a moment and kind of illustrate that process for you. 225 or so.
Oh, sorry. Get this thing to move.
Now that we've spoken a little bit about the e-waste life cycle, let's get into what we do as an electronics recycler from the perspective of a laptop discarded at the end of its service life. Our role begins with collection. We help to coordinate packing and shipping of the items that will be coming to us in the most efficient way possible to help reduce our carbon footprint. Once the equipment makes it through our doors, it's tagged and inventoried into our system. From there, items are sorted into categorized streams to ensure that each type of material is handled appropriately. This is a large part of what an electronic recycler does behind the scene. And it's at this stage that our laptop comes into the picture once discovered by our sorting team. Because laptops are among many data-containing devices, they're given special attention to ensure that all data and storage devices are removed and sanitized. Now that our laptop has been cleared of any personal data, we have our first opportunity to complete the life cycle. Items that are relatively new and free of heavy cosmetic or functional damage are refurbished or repaired and reintroduced back into the market whenever possible. Reuse is considered first, as it's the simplest and often most cost-effective form of recycling. Unfortunately, our laptop is beyond its usable life, and it's also showing some sign of heavy wear. It's effectively scrap at this point. Scrap material that's not suitable for reuse will be dismantled into the basic components used to manufacture it. Our laptop will be demanufactured by hand and sorted by the separate metals, boards, and plastics originally used to create it. Other items from the same load can be shredded, sheared, or otherwise processed into raw commodities using specialized equipment. Once we've collected enough of our processed raw materials, they'll be shipped to partner facilities that specialize in each specific commodity generated. For example, the plastics are sent to a plastics recycler that further segregates by type and color to be granulated. Metals like steel, aluminum, and copper are taken in by metal yards who accumulate them in massive volumes. They're then shipped to a smelter to be refined and ultimately become ingots for use in future products. Circuit boards are sent to specialized smelters that use thermal energy to recover the precious metals found in the circuits and components. For all specialty recyclers, the end goal is the same: to create a clean, raw material that can be sold back to manufacturers to begin the life cycle all over again. Maybe our laptop's plastic casing will become the bezel to a new smartphone. The metals could contribute to new electric vehicles, and the precious metals could find practical or ornamental use. No matter the application, these efforts help to reduce our dependence on finite raw material that needs to be harvested, refined, and shipped at an increasing cost to our environment.
So there you see, oh, thanks, Liz. So there you see the process of e-waste recycling. And I talked about those $3.1 billion of potential for Minnesota's economy within the metals that we have in our e-waste each year. And I gave a couple of caveats, right? Said if we could, first of all, if we were able to extract 100% of the metals during our recycling process, which currently is not possible. Some metals, only a few metals are targeted, and they're retrieving in the 90s percentage of the metals that they're targeting. So it's definitely a technology issue, but more importantly than that, and much more simply, is a systems issue. So in the US, we have 25 states that have collection laws, right, for e-waste. That helps manage the collection and distribution of e-waste for proper disposal and recycling of the material. And but in Minnesota, we recycle about 24%, and really none of these other states are doing any better than that. Nationally, we're collecting about 15%, meaning the rest of the material is going to improper disposal and also being stored in people's basements, right? We talked about some of the different types of e-waste that we have, and I'm curious, of everybody who's here, who has a drawer of shame? Yeah, people always know what I'm talking about when I say that. A drawer of shame, right? What is that? A drawer full of old electronics, and you're thinking, I'm gonna get rid of this someday, but I want to do the right thing with it, right? But you're not sure what that is. I'm curious, who said they had a drawer of shame? They're in the back. What's in your drawer of shame? Yeah, old cords that you're not sure what to do with. Who else has a drawer of shame?
It's a transformer that wasn't the law. At least 4 old cell phones.
Transformers, cell phones. Okay, yep, cell phones that have maybe a little bit of useful life left, not quite e-waste. All right, who else had one?
Those are normal CD players that don't.
Okay, yep. CD players that don't work anymore. So kind of my follow-up question, and I'll give that to you, is why haven't you recycled it yet?
Not sure how to do that.
Not sure how to do that, yeah. Who else? Why haven't you recycled yours yet?
I know they're not.
They're not taking cords right now. Is that St. Louis County or? Okay, so they just sent out a, how do you know that? Okay, so you're a volunteer for the e-waste collection system, yeah? Wow, so you have insider knowledge, so you know a little bit more than probably most folks in this room about what's being collected and what's not being collected. So does that list of things that you collect, does that change pretty frequently, or? Right, a pretty short list of things that are being accepted, right? TVs, monitors of a certain size. What else did you say? Is that it?
Laptops and desktops.
Yeah.
Laptops and desktops, yeah, so that's, we have talked a little bit about how broad the definition of e-waste is. That's not a lot. There's a lot more types of e-waste out there. So RECA, Recycling Electronics for Climate Action, has a collection bill that we're going to be putting forward this year in the 2024 session. So I'd love to go into some of those details, but before I do that, I know I've kind of given a lot of information for folks and definitely trying to squish lots of information into a short time. So I'd like to just take a moment for questions about anything that we've addressed so far before I go into the bill details.
I'm curious if in your studies you have developed a sort of standard around reducing use. I mean, I understand that the solution includes recycling, but do you have a companion suggestion as to how we go about living our lives when we're actually using the technology?
Absolutely. Well, I guess I have a bias. I used to work at an electronics refurbishing and recycling company, so or nonprofit organization actually. And so I would say repair your electronics, right? If you can, extend their life cycle as long as you can, and don't purchase things you don't need. You know, before you purchase an electronic device, ask yourself, do I really need this? Or can I buy it next year? Can I buy it a different time, or maybe consider for a little bit longer if you need it or not?
Let's get into that though, because I'm curious, like, do you have a particular electronic trend that just, you're like, oh my gosh, why does this exist? But people don't need it. Cause I'm using my phone all the time, I'm using my computer all the time. And just, yeah, I'm just interested to dig into that. What's
Sure.
superfluous
Oh.
based on your knowledge?
I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is AirPods. I don't know if you raise your hand if you know what AirPods are. They're kind of new and okay, everybody knows that. They're headphones that you can use without a wire, right? Without plugging it in directly to the device that you're listening from. So they work with Bluetooth. And the thing about AirPods is that each headphone and the charging box has an embedded lithium ion battery, which is just really problematic for the waste stream and also for the e-waste recyclers that they equally struggle with it. They also get into our improper, our municipal recycling facilities and our landfills as well, and they're very small, so it's very hard to identify them as a battery and a potential fire hazard, right? Another trend I would say is e-cigarettes, those vapes that you buy. They're not, the concept is not too new. They've had those kind of rechargeable vapes for a while, but what is new is these disposable vapes. You actually buy them and they don't even have a plug-in. You cannot recharge them. You use it until the battery is dead and then you throw it away. And those are causing fires like crazy, and could potentially cause a huge crisis for our waste management. Well, they're a huge problem, and I would say even worse than AirPods.
Very much. Yeah, Jerry?
What causes the fires? Like the fires that you showed us pictures of, what causes those fires?
Primarily two types of batteries. So there's quite a few different chemistries of batteries, right? Lead acid batteries are in your car, those big ones, right? And you have alkaline batteries, which are the like AA, AAA, those are ones you throw into toys, and once they're done, right? But the lithium ion batteries, like that are in your cell phone or your laptop, or for example, these vapes and AirPods, those are the ones that are really causing the fires. And I'm not a chemistry person, so I probably won't go into how that happens exactly, but it's very easy to disturb them and cause fires.
I was wondering if it's the heat couldn't they start from heat in recharging them? Because oftentimes when you're charging things, they produce a lot of heat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, lithium is an element. And if it's exposed to air or any moisture of any kind, it starts fire. And so I used to work for Medtronic and medical devices, and we use lithium ion iodide batteries. And so you needed to be very careful in how you were putting the materials in the battery. And there was actually one of the chemists was trying to dispose of lithium, and you put it in a beaker of water and you could dispose of it that way, but he put too much in and blew the whole hood apart that he was working with. And so it's a very volatile metal. And so just exposing it to the air, the moisture can cause that.
Which, if you're familiar at all with how waste haulers, how the trucks work, every time they do a pickup, they compact the waste, right? So you're definitely gonna get a puncture in that, in most of your lithium ion batteries during that process, and that's what irritates the lithium and causes it to, start a fire. Sorry.
Hi, I was wondering, with all of the Chromebooks that are coming through the schools after the pandemic, people trying to figure out remote education, a lot of laptops were produced with a very short life cycle. So the Chromebooks that were put out to schools, they reached an end of life every 4 years. So Google Chromebooks, every 4 years, they are no longer being maintained. So I was wondering, there are ways of putting Linux and other operating systems on those and then using them that way. It's not easy to sell those at a high price. What is like your threshold for reusing laptops? And at what age and what condition? And what's the value of recycling the components versus attempting to use that as a computer and put it in the hands of like students or international collaborations, et cetera?
But that's a hard question just to answer like broadly. Also, I'm not a repair technician. I used to work with a lot of repair technicians. They would be able to answer that question spot on for you. But I know Chromebooks specifically have a big design issue. Just that when you remove the screen in order to make repairs, the screen usually breaks, making that repair not worth it anymore. So design is a big issue in the sustainability of electronics, which is not something we're addressing with our bill, but it's something that needs to happen in general. Has anybody heard of right to repair that passed last year? Yeah. So that was one thing that I worked on personally and on behalf of Repowered. And that basically allows independent repair shops access to information on how to repair devices and also access to the parts and tools to fix those devices. So that's kind of one piece of legislation that was trying to address a similar issue to what you're talking about here, is just increasing the lifespan of devices is really important to their sustainability. In fact, it's higher up on the waste hierarchy than recycling. When we're talking about e-waste recycling, we're already 3 steps down the waste hierarchy. First, it's better to reduce, right? Don't consume as much. Don't buy as many electronics. And reduce, right? You use your electronics longer. And reuse, right? Repair them, get them back out into the market. And then once neither of those are viable, then recycling is the best option, right? So we're aware of that as the work that we're doing. We understand where we are in the waste hierarchy, and yeah.
I'm interested in knowing, is there a proposed tax on these products for recovery?
Yeah.
And I think also because of government use and just the multiplications of all the devices, how is government coming alongside you?
Definitely. Actually, I'm gonna hold on that one because I'm about to spend some time talking about exactly that. I'll take one more question and then I'll hop into the 100% collection bill.
And maybe you've already identified the locations for recycling, but you pointed out that the festival doesn't have a high level of potential in terms of where to deliver your goods if they can't be recycled. So we're at the end of the road. Is there a travel location or is there a source of information if you were to accumulate some things that you could deliver them to?
Yep, actually, this is exactly what I'm getting into with the 100% collection bill. So these issues as far as convenience and the cost of collection, and also like what items are collected in your county, for example, this is what we're trying to address with the 100% collection and recycling bill. Yeah, I'll use the others. Right now like we've talked about, it is hard to find where to drop off your electronics, which electronics you can drop off. Is it going to cost you money? How much money is it going to cost? Are they going to send you to another location and send you chasing all around? And there's not a lot of clear messaging. There's not a lot of consistent collection across the state. And that's why we're seeing only 24% collection, right? It's not that people like you all don't want to recycle your items, you do. It's just there's a lot of barriers. So we see this as kind of the lowest hanging fruit in the answer to how do we get these $3.1 billion worth of metals back into our economy, and also addressing some of the environmental issues that e-waste causes in the waste stream when it isn't properly disposed of. It's here too. So our bill is aiming at 100% collection, right? Bringing us from 24% to 100. And there's a few mechanisms. Oh, right, I forgot the main clickers. There's a few mechanisms with which we believe we can do that. And I'm gonna kind of give you just a brief overview of what those are in comparison to the legislation that we currently have in place, which was put in place in 2007. One of the most important changes that we're making with this bill is the definition of what is e-waste, right? What is a covered electronic device that is eligible for being part of this program. So in comparison, the 2007 definition are things like computers, DVD players, video cassette recorders, and video display devices or TVs, right? So that's probably why you're seeing that limited list in your county of what they will accept, because that is what is covered by the 2007 legislation, and that's what they can get credits for to collect. Otherwise, the county has to pay out of pocket for the rest of it, right? And even out of these categories, only residential sources are eligible. So already when they're making these definitions, it's quite a small subsection of the total e-waste stream that's being generated each year in Minnesota. And as you can see here, there's some kind of outdated devices, right? DVD players, video cassette recorders, those aren't things that people are buying anymore in general. So these things are still entering our waste stream, but less and less each year. In 2007, when this bill was first enacted, it supported the collection of 40 million pounds of electronic waste. In 2021, it supported only around 20 million pounds. So it's already half of what it was originally covering, right? And remember that in Minnesota, we generate 266 million pounds. So it was falling short in the beginning because of its kind of tight definition of what could be covered electronic device, but it's becoming more and more obsolete each year as the e-waste stream evolves and changes. So in the 100% bill, we define an electronic device as anything powered by electricity, right? So the definition is very broad, very flexible, and it will be sustainable into the future. Even though we don't know what those devices are going to be, what new technology is going to be out there and entering the waste stream, we just don't know. So we're going to leave the definition very, very broad. And then from there, we make exclusions, kind of common sense exclusions for things that are easily or already being recycled. For example, lead acid batteries are excluded from this bill because in Minnesota, we recycle about 95% of them because they have their own program. They have like a buyback program. So it doesn't make sense to have them part of this bill. So things like that. Also things that can't be handled by the current e-waste stream kind of infrastructure, like EV vehicles. Anything related to EV vehicles is excluded because those are going to be recycled by different means and different stakeholders will be involved. So kind of first step here that we're trying to update is the definition of e-waste. I'm just trying to keep track of time here. We end at 1, right? Yeah, okay. So here are some examples of devices that would never be captured. If you wrote a definitions of what e-waste is and what a covered electronic device is, they would not have predicted these disposable vapes or AirPods or Alexa speakers, right? Because they didn't know that that was coming. So our bill is going to be funded by a point of sale fee on electronic devices. It's estimated right now, it's not final, but estimated around 4%. And so that means when you go to buy an electronic device, you pay 4% more. And then when you go to recycle your device, it will be free. And this is to encourage businesses and residents to do that, to make that step to collect their, or to recycle their devices. And our reimbursement structure is also aimed at driving 100% collection. We are taking the reimbursement from going from manufacturers to the end of life recyclers and redirecting it to the collectors themselves to incentivize them financially to increase how much they are collecting. And we believe this is one of the key things that is going to drive increased weight being collected in the system. So outcomes of the 2007 legislation, as we saw, it started out covering 40 million pounds of recycling and then decreased to 20 million pounds in 2021. And as a result, we're only collecting about a quarter of our total e-waste stream. The 100% bill outcomes are expected that we will have enough to collect 133 million pounds. And the reason it's 133 is because white goods, they're going to be excluded. So large appliances like your refrigerator, those are mostly recycled by metal scrap recyclers locally, so they're being excluded from the e-waste bill. Collectors will be incentivized, there'll be free collection for all businesses and residents. And our goal is to get as close to 100% as possible. So I'm gonna skip that part, but just go straight to questions. Go ahead.
Just wondering about one of the main things that spurred is the switch from electrical use in like light bulbs, for example, the LED bulbs and so what is the impact of making those changes? You're trying to accomplish one thing, but what do you end up with in terms of a electronic recyclable material? Can you recycle light bulbs? Can you recycle LED bulbs? Can you? That's a question.
Yeah, almost all electronics are recyclable. And certainly anything with a battery or a circuit board or a cord, right? Because those components are highly recyclable and the metals in them are very circular. You can keep recycling them kind of almost infinitely. That isn't to say that the plastics are still totally an issue. Plastic is just not a good material in general, but did I answer your question? Not quite.
Light bulb.
Oh, light bulbs.
So is there anything in the
Right, actually, and you mentioned LEDs, so that's a difference between the LED and the fluorescent bulbs. The fluorescent bulbs, they used to, well, they still do, they recycle the glass and the aluminum primarily, and also the mercury retort, because there's mercury in those bulbs. The LED bulbs are very different, they get recycled more like traditional e-waste because they have a circuit board in them. So they kind of separate that circuit board out, and that goes with the rest of the circuit boards, and the rest of the other material, the plastics and the glass, gets recycled in those streams. Yeah, very similar to normal e-waste stream, whereas fluorescents used to have their own whole separate stream because of how much mercury they have. Yeah.
Where do printer cartridges, they fit into this at all, or are they completely different or?
Yeah, so printer cartridges, their best hope is that they get reused. Sometimes they can be refurbished. Printer cartridges, especially the big commercial ones, they have a small circuit board in them that can be recycled with the rest of the circuit boards. Otherwise, it's mostly plastic, which we know is bad news in general. Even if it is recycled, plastic has a lot of toxins in it, brominated flame retardants, and lots of dioxins whenever you mess with plastic. It's just, hopefully we'll see a society where we don't need plastic in everything.
Where's one of the closest facilities that they showed that you could separate all that stuff out? Do we have one in Minnesota or what?
We do, actually in St. Cloud, there's what we call a high grade shredder. They take just the circuit boards and they shred them up, and then they send that shredded and sorted material to the materials recovery facility. So St. Cloud.
Perhaps electronic retailers could be incentivized to take recyclables, electronic recyclables. If my laptop goes bad and I go to Best Buy to replace it, to upgrade it, it would be really convenient for me to take my defunct laptop along with me. And
Yeah, actually, Best Buy is a collector. Right now, they're a registered collector, and under the 100% bill, the registered collector list is not necessarily going to change. We're hoping a few more will come online with the economic incentive provided to do so. Best Buy collects around 1 million pounds a year, and so you can collect a limited list of items with them. And I think they collect like they'll accept like 2 items per person or something. Yeah. But it's not all encompassing. They don't collect they don't collect anything powered by electricity. They collect like laptops and phones, I think, mostly. Yeah.
Yeah,
just have a comment. One of the major things that they're looking for in almost all circuit boards is copper. And that's the main material. So every laptop, cell phone has copper in it. And that's one of the major elements they're looking for in mining. So if we could get the copper elsewhere, then that's a win.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big part of the motivation for all of this work. In order to recycle that material and get those metals back, we have to collect it first. If it's in our landfills or going into our incinerators, we're not going to be recycling it. I think there's a question back here.
How does that 4% increase tax for electronics that would apply to consumers, right? Use tax. How does that accommodate underserved communities that might already have trouble affording electronics that they need?
Yeah. We excluded all refurbished electronics from being taxed, partly because it doesn't make sense to tax a device twice, but primarily because a lot of those communities that are really have a tight budget and are really going to be looking at the dollars and cents behind whatever electronic device they're buying, the majority of those people are buying refurbished technology. I've actually never bought a new phone or a laptop before, but so that market, the whole secondhand market for electronics, those that will not be taxed. Sorry, I'm gonna take, I almost.
What right now today should we do with different kinds of batteries that we just get rid of? I was once told, I took a whole bunch of them to the landfill and they say just throw them in the trash because that's all we're gonna do with them.
Yeah. Yeah, so what should we do with our batteries that you take out of devices? You took it to your landfill and they said throw it away, right? They were probably alkaline batteries perhaps that, yep. So that's unfortunate. The MPCA actually encourages people to throw those away, even though the steel, the zinc, and the brass in those batteries can be recycled. So under this bill, there would actually be an incentive. So if you were taking it to a landfill and they were a registered collector, they would want you to give it to them for recycling because they would get paid to do so. So that's definitely today, it depends on, unfortunately, I can't really answer questions based on people that don't live in my county. I don't know what to tell you to do with your electronics because it changes depending on which county, which city you live in, and that's part of the problem that we're trying to solve, is to standardize this and make it accessible.
Until we get a collector.
Right, and that's exactly why we have drawers of shame, yeah. Yeah, maybe Marley's. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I guess, so I understand why the 4% tax helps the whole thing, but I'm curious if you ever considered a like deposit system. So further incentivize, like from the consumer point of view, making it more convenient than just like throwing it in the trash, which is also free.
Right, so a deposit system would mean when you buy the device, you're paying maybe $1 to a few extra dollars, and then when you recycle your device, you get that dollar back, right? That would definitely incentivize individuals to recycle, but it doesn't help pay for things like shipping, especially in rural areas. Talking to environmental services folks up in Coochin County and St. Louis County, they really need their shipping costs covered in order to make this collection work for them. Otherwise, they're taking just too much of their tax dollars to do so, and that's not a popular move. So they need a program to fund that. So the deposit system would create incentive, but it wouldn't help cover the costs of the facilities that are doing that collection.
What is the status of the bill? And then listeners are interested in supporting it, how can they do so?
Right. Yeah, so we're going to be introducing our bill in February when the session starts. We have Athena Hollins is going to be our champion and author in the House, and Rob Kupek is our author in the Senate. We have quite a bit of legislative support, especially in the House. The Senate, as it is a very, very small majority, is of course where we're concerned the most of our, what our success will be there. But we have quite a bit of legislative support so far. If you're interested in getting involved or perhaps being on a call with one of your representatives or Some of the organizations that we mentioned at the beginning, are organizations that could sign on supporting, legislation like this. There are QR codes, I think, at each table. If you want to scan that QR code, there's a survey there and you can fill out that survey and just let me know if there's information that you would like to have, additional information, a copy of the bill, etc. And also let me know if you are interested in the idea of having an organization sign on or being a part of a conversation with legislators.
We also have some paper handouts for us dinosaurs. We have some paper handouts and they have Maria's email at the bottom as well as Athena Holland's email at the bottom, and they summarize what was in Maria's presentation. And we also have some bookmarks that some of them have gone around, not all of them perhaps, but there's a link on the back where you can go to the page on the Iron Range Partnership for Sustainability website and read the study for yourself and see graphics of all of the things that Maria talked about.
Thank you so much, Maria and friends.